My name is Stella Richer, and I was 31 years old when I learned that love doesn't usually fall apart with shouting or slammed doors. Sometimes it erodes quietly, worn down by assumptions, entitlement, and one careless sentence spoken without a second thought. 6 months ago, I called off my wedding, not because of infidelity, not because of cruelty or violence, but because the man I planned to marry believed that my financial discipline made me replaceable, expendable, something he could lean on without asking. At the time, my life looked steady from the outside. I lived in Michigan and worked in logistics operations for a regional distribution company. I'd been with the same employer since graduating college. I wasn't someone who jumped from job to job chasing inflated titles or flashy perks. I stayed, learned the systems inside and out, earned trust, and slowly climbed. By my early 30s, I was overseeing multi-state routes across the Midwest. The salary wasn't glamorous, but it was dependable, and dependability mattered to me. In 2019, when the market dipped, I bought my condo outright. 2 bedrooms, a kitchen I remodeled with my own hands, a parking spot that actually fit my truck, no debt, 6 months of emergency savings, a credit score that made loan officers smile politely. I wasn't wealthy, I was prepared, and I believed that preparation was something to be proud of. I met Evan Caldwell in the spring of 2022 at a mutual friend's backyard barbecue. The host had no idea how to manage a grill, so I stepped in, flipping burgers while smoke drifted into the air. Evan wandered over, asked if anything was edible yet, and smiled in a way that felt easy and confident. He complimented my grilling skills, which worked on me more than I care to admit. He worked in education administration. He was charming, quick to laugh, talked about wanting stability, a family, something lasting and real. We talked for hours about work stress, future goals, how exhausting modern dating had become. Being with Evan felt effortless in the beginning. He started spending weekends at my place. We cooked together, watched movies on the couch, took short trips up north. He said he liked how organized I was, admired that I owned my home, told me it made him feel grounded and secure. His family welcomed me quickly. His father ran a small auto shop. His mother worked part-time at a library. They were warm, familiar, safe. By fall, Evan was talking about moving in, about rings, about forever. I believed him. When he proposed that December, standing at an overlook as the sun dipped below the horizon, I cried. He cried. People around us cheered. We set the date for September 2024. That was when I made my first mistake. I opened a joint savings account for wedding expenses. It felt practical, responsible, transparent. I deposited most of the money, funds I had saved carefully and deliberately for this exact moment. Evan contributed too, but not equally. I told myself partnerships weren't about perfect math. I didn't realize I was giving someone access to my future without understanding how differently we defined ownership. I also didn't realize his ex-girlfriend was already finding her way back into his life. The shift was subtle at first, the kind you only recognize in hindsight when the damage is already done. It started in early June, a few months after we'd locked in most of the wedding vendors. Evan came home one evening and casually mentioned he'd run into Lena at Target. "Lena?" I asked, glancing up from my laptop. "My ex from college," he said quickly, like it barely mattered. "She moved back to Michigan." The way he said it, relaxed and dismissive, made me feel foolish for even pausing. "Oh," I said, "how is she?" "She's fine," he shrugged. "Life's been rough for her. We caught up, that's all." It should have ended there. Instead, it grew. Over the next few weeks, Lena's name came up more often. He talked about her car problems, her long bus commute, how exhausted she was, how she was trying to get her life back together. He framed it as concern, as empathy. I wanted to believe that was all it was. Then there were the texts. He'd smile at his phone during dinner, laugh softly at messages he didn't immediately explain. When I asked what was funny, he'd show me a harmless meme, just enough to deflect, never enough to reassure. "She's having a rough time," he told me one night. "I feel bad for her." I nodded, because that's what supportive partners do. I didn't realize how often sympathy turns into entitlement. By mid-July, the wedding felt close enough to touch: final payments, seating charts, last-minute details, the kind of stress that's supposed to bring couples together. One evening, we sat at the kitchen table with my laptop open and spreadsheets pulled up. "Let's just make sure we're good before we send the last payments," I said casually as I logged into the joint account. The page loaded, the balance refreshed, and my stomach dropped so hard I thought I might be sick. $347. I stared at the number, waiting for it to change, waiting for reality to correct itself. It didn't. The account should have held over $18,000. My hands shook as I opened the transaction history. There it was, July 15th, withdrawal, $12,000, electronic transfer to an account I didn't recognize. "Evan," I said slowly, turning the screen toward him, "what is this?" The color drained from his face in stages, white, then flushed, then something defensive settled behind his eyes. "Oh," he said, "I was going to tell you." My heart pounded. "You took $12,000 from our wedding account without telling me." He leaned back and crossed his arms, a posture I suddenly recognized as his default when preparing to justify himself. "Lena needed help," he said. The words barely registered. "What?" I asked. "Her car completely died," he continued. "She was spending 4 hours a day on public transportation. It was affecting her job. I couldn't just watch her struggle." I felt cold all over. "You used our wedding money to buy your ex-girlfriend a car." "I didn't buy it for her," he snapped. "I helped her buy it. There's a difference." There wasn't. We were 5 weeks from getting married. That money was for our wedding. You know that. "I know," he said, exasperated, "but you're responsible. You always land on your feet." "So because I plan ahead, I'm the safety net," I said. "That's not fair," he snapped. "I was helping someone who needed it. Then you should have used your own money. I don't have 12 grand sitting around." "Neither did I. I saved for over a year." "And you can save again," he said like it was obvious. The logic made my head ache. He couldn't afford to help her, so he took money that wasn't his and expected me to absorb the loss. "What kind of car did you buy her?" I asked. "A 2019 Honda Civic," he said quickly. "Low miles, clean title. It was a great deal." "And the title?" "Her name, obviously." "Of course it was." I laughed, short and brittle. "You stole from our wedding fund, and I'm still the one you're calling cruel." "I didn't steal anything. My name was on the account. For wedding expenses, not gifts to your ex. She's my friend now. Don't turn this into jealousy." "I'm not jealous. I'm betrayed." That word stopped him. He stared at me like he hadn't expected it. "I should have asked," he said finally, "but what's done is done. We need to move forward." Move forward how? By fixing it, together. Together meant me paying for his decision. I stood and walked to the window, my reflection calm on the surface, fractured underneath. "You knew I'd say no," I said. "That's why you didn't ask." He didn't deny it. I grabbed my keys and left before the conversation could sink deeper into something permanent. I drove for nearly 2 hours, replaying everything. Eventually, I ended up at my friend Marissa's apartment. She took one look at me and said, "Okay, start talking." I told her everything. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she said, "So your fiancé took your wedding money, gave it to his ex, and expects you to replace it because you're good with money?" "Yes." "That's not a mistake," she said. "That's a value system." "What are you going to do?" she asked. I opened my mouth to say, "Fix it," the answer I'd trained myself to give. But the truth caught in my throat. "I don't know," I admitted. Marissa nodded. "Then here's your answer. Don't marry someone you're not sure about. Canceling a wedding is expensive. Divorce is worse." She was right. The next morning, I called in sick and made an appointment with a lawyer. By noon, I was sitting in a quiet office across from a woman who'd seen the story play out more times than she could count. And by the time I left, I didn't just have clarity, I had a plan. The word lawyer changed everything. When I walked back into my condo that evening, Evan was already there, sitting on the couch like nothing had happened. His jacket was draped over the armrest, his shoes were kicked off. He looked comfortable. Too comfortable. "Where were you?" he asked, standing up. "I've been texting you all day." "I was talking to a lawyer," I said. The color drained from his face. "A lawyer?" He laughed nervously. "Stella, come on. This isn't a legal issue, it's a relationship problem." "It's both," I replied calmly. "You withdrew $12,000 from a joint account established for a specific purpose without my consent and transferred it to a third party. That's misappropriation of funds." He stared at me like I'd started speaking another language. "You're really going to make this into something like that?" he said. "I was helping someone." "Your ex-girlfriend?" I corrected. He paced the room, running his hairs through his hair. "I can't believe you're doing this. I can't believe you went straight to a lawyer instead of talking to me." "I did talk to you," I said. "You told me I could just make more." That stopped him. "So what?" he snapped. "You're going to sue me? Ruin my credit? Drag me through court?" "I'm going to get my money back," I said. "However that has to happen." His confidence cracked. "I don't have that kind of money," he said quietly. "You know that." "Then you're going to have to figure it out," I replied, "or get it back from Lena." He sank onto the couch like his legs had given out. "Stella, please," he said. "I messed up. I should have asked. I'm sorry. Can we just move past this?" The apology came too late and without understanding. "What exactly would moving past it look like?" I asked. "You keeping the money gone, the wedding still happening, and me learning to live with it?" He didn't answer. "Evan," I said softly, "there is no wedding." The silence that followed was deafening. "You don't mean that," he said finally. "You're just upset." "I'm not upset," I replied. "I'm done." His face crumpled. "You're ending our engagement over this?" "Yes," I said. "Over theft, over disrespect, over the fact that you chose your ex-girlfriend over our future." "I didn't choose her over you," he shouted. "Then explain how giving her our wedding money isn't exactly that." He opened his mouth, closed it, tried again. Nothing came out. "I want you out by Friday," I said. "Take what's yours, leave the key on the counter." "This is insane," he said, voice breaking. "You're throwing everything away over one decision." "One decision that showed me who you are," I said, "and I believe people when they show me." I went into the bedroom and closed the door while he sat there stunned. The next 2 days were a blur. I canceled vendors, lost deposits, accepted sunk costs. Every phone call hurt, but everyone also felt lighter than the last. I called my parents. They were disappointed, but not surprised. "I always felt something was off," my mother admitted quietly. "He relied on you too easily." Evan moved back with his parents. His mother called me furious, accusing me of ruining his son's life. I didn't argue. The following Monday, I filed the lawsuit. The paperwork was clean, factual, cold. $12,000, misappropriation of funds, breach of agreement. When Evan was served, he texted me non-stop. Apologies, anger, bargaining. I didn't respond. Court came faster than I expected. Evan showed up alone, unprepared, trying to appeal to emotion. I showed up with bank statements, text messages, timelines. The judge didn't look impressed. "You knowingly withdrew funds designated for a specific purpose without consent. That's misappropriation." The ruling came quickly. Judgment in my favor. Evan was ordered to repay the full amount plus costs or submit to enforcement. As I left the courthouse, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Not joy, relief. But the story wasn't over. Because the car, the one bought with my money, was still out there, and legally it was never really hers to begin with. Winning the judgment was half the battle. Paper victories feel good until you remember that paper doesn't move money on its own. Evan submitted a payment proposal 2 weeks later, $200 a month. At that rate, it would have taken 5 years for him to repay what he took, not including interest. I rejected it, not out of spite, but because accountability doesn't stretch into infinity just because it's inconvenient. My attorney filed a motion to investigate the fraudulent transfer of assets, specifically the car purchased with misappropriated funds. Once the judge approved it, everything changed. Because now the Honda Civic wasn't just a gift, it was evidence. The dealership cooperated once they saw the court order. They flagged the vehicle and confirmed the purchase details. Cash sale, July 15th. Title in Lena's name. I reached out to her directly. I kept the message factual, calm, precise. She responded within an hour, shocked, angry, and devastated. She never knew the money came from our wedding account. I never would have accepted it, she wrote. He told me he'd been saving. I believed her, but belief doesn't erase legal reality. When the notice was served, Lena disappeared. Evan, meanwhile, spiraled. He stopped paying on time, missed deadlines, ignored messages, so the repossession moved forward. 2 days later, the Civic was surrendered voluntarily. The dealership applied its value toward a cheaper replacement vehicle for Lena. I received a check, not the full $12,000. Depreciation had taken its cut, but enough to close the wound. Evan lost the car, lost Lena, lost his reputation. He posted online, ranted about betrayal, claimed I'd weaponized the legal system. People who knew the truth stayed quiet. People who didn't matter. 2 months later, Evan was fired. Transportation issues, attendance problems, excuses. By winter, he'd moved back in with his parents. I didn't celebrate. I healed. In March, I was promoted. A raise, better benefits, recognition I'd earned. I used part of my bonus to take myself on a solo trip. No compromises, no apologies. I started dating again, slowly, carefully, boundaries in place. The first time I told the story, the man across from me didn't flinch. He stole from you, he said, and expected you to accept it. You did exactly what you should have. That was how I knew I was ready. I ran into Evan once after that, in a grocery store aisle. He looked thinner, tired, smaller somehow. We made eye contact. He turned away, and I realized something important. I hadn't ruined his life. I had simply refused to finance the version of him that thought my strength was his resource. And that was the moment I truly moved on.